نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. How do we see Tablighi Jama'at? So we need to have a bit of background of what this Jama'ah is. This was initiated by Hazrat Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah alayhi, Kandhlawi, from Kandhla, India, more than 100 years ago. He was one of the well-known scholars of the time. Uncle of Maulana Zakaria Rahmatullah alayhi, who was a Shaykh al-Hadith, and he was younger brother of Maulana Yahya Sahib Rahmatullah alayhi, who was one of the great Imam of the time, scholar of the time, very big Hafiz, very big Qari. He was giving da'wah, he was teaching Hadith, Sahih al-Bukhari and many other books, a proper alim, a sheikh, and he realized that there's a big problem among ummah, the common people. Ulama and talaba, mashallah, they're doing okay in those days, but the youth, the young people, the common people, the people who do not have access to ulama or the ilm, they do not go to masjid or for formal studies, although they should have. Prior to that, ummah had always recognized the value of ulama, and they would go and sit with them, even if they do not want to be a proper alim, they would still go and learn a lot from the masjid, from the people. He realized the problem of ummah is that they do not get connected to ulama and learn from them. He said we should encourage people and give them enough incentive and enough, zeal and longing to learn deen. We have to initiate, we have to work somehow to ignite this fire in the hearts of common people. For that he initiated this work of Tabligh, where the people would go out, those who know the bit and the value of deen, they would go out and invite these youth and young people and common people who have detached themselves from the ulama and masajid, and bring them back to the masjid. So it was just to go and bring them back to the masjid and connect them to ulama, connect them to the shuyukh. So those who are outside should come back to the masjid. Normally, people should go to the water tank rather than the tank or the well going to people. But he says, since people are not coming to the tank, they're not coming to the sources of knowledge, the ulama or the masajid, we should try a mechanism whereby we could go out to them and bring them back to the masajid, connect them back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because without this, there will be no khair in ummah. We lose out on our aqeedah, we lose out on our action. So that work they started. The Jama'ah, he would start sending few people here and there, and it did very well. And for last 100 years or so, you would see the mihna, the activity is widespread in the whole world. MashaAllah, there's no place that they've left except that they've been there to invite people for the sake of Allah, without asking for anything other than coming to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their own charity, with their own personal, expenses. They would not ask any fund, they would not ask anything from people. Since Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah was himself a sheikh and a scholar as well, and plus da'i, the preacher, he would send these people to different places to invite and call upon these common men and youth to come to the masjid. He advised them to go to the local masjid first, meet the imam there, say salam, and ask them to make dua for your work. Because without them and them making dua for you, you would not find barakah. So that was this mihna. Connect people back to ulama, bring them back to the masajid. And it did work very well. Over some time, he then decided that there should be a curriculum for common people. There should be something that they can learn from, a simple something. So he appointed for this task his own nephew, who happens to be his son-in-law as well, after his first wife died, Maulana Zakaria Rahmatullah alayhi, who was a Shaykh al-Hadith teaching Bukhari and other big major books. Maulana Zakaria Rahmatullah alayhi himself a big Shaykh, a big Muhaddis, a very great alim. He never spent time in Tabligh, but he is known to be Shaykh al-Hadith, the one who has done a lot of work in Hadith genre. A lot of books written. The commentary of Muwatta Imam Malik, Awjazul Masalik, the commentary of Abu Dawud Sharif, which was his teacher's notes which he compiled in Arabic, all of that work. About the Abwab al-Tarajim of Sahih al-Bukhari, he has written extensively on that. So he is really Imam of Hadith, Muhaddith of the time, a great scholar and a spiritual master on top of that. And he lived his life and part of his life in in Medina, sorry. So this Shaykh then, after the instruction and instruction of his teacher, his mentor and his, uncle, he wrote this book called Fadailul A'mal, the virtues of good deeds. And in that, he brought under each subject, under each rubric heading, a Quranic ayah, then maybe more than one ayah, it depends on the topic, and then some hadith, and then some sayings of the pious people, Sahaba, some anecdotes. This is how he worked. So the book is, mashallah, widely accepted and it's been read left, right and center. Perhaps most read book, one of the most read book definitely in Southeast Asia. Translated in many languages. Now the hadith, which are normally a focus of criticism by some people, number one, they are not brought there as the main evidence for the action. Rather, these are supportive or corroborative evidences for the principle which has already been established either by Quranic ayat or another Sahih hadith, generally. Second point is the hadith that he brought are in matters of encouragement or discouragement. Encouragement to do good, discouragement to stay away from bad. It's like what we call targheeb and tarheeb. The fadail. Fadail means the virtues of good deeds, certain deeds that you should be carrying out. In that, in this genre, in this domain, scholars or the muhaddithun are not strict with regards to the authenticity of the hadith. They say in fadail, we are not making any aqidah based on these ayat, these ahadith, sorry. We're not making any judgment even based on these weak or very weak narrations. These are only to encourage people, because certain people, the simple-minded people, some of them have this idea, if you give them a very good reason with a big reward and a big punishment for a sin, they would not do that action. They would not carry out that good deed unless you say, no, you know what? And they would take it. They shouldn't, because people are so simple sometimes. They only go for the best deal. They think that they're doing the best thing. So there are certain weak narrations. They're not fabricated. They're very weak, and they're considered beneficial. And people do find them useful. So with his experience, he realized that these sort of ahadith would attract people from carrying out the good deeds and refrain from the bad deeds. So he incorporated those ahadith as well. As I said, this is widely accepted principle that in matter of fadail, you can use the weak narration. Now, another thing is, whatever narration he brought in his book, he's not the first one who ever brought these ahadith. Even greater imams before his time, from the earlier Islam to now, at least one of them would have brought those ahadith in their book. So he's not, single on his bringing these ahadith in his book. Rather, there are other people who have done the same. If you charge him with something, you would do the same to the other imam. And if you know that those giant imams and their stature and status in ummah is such that you know the caliber, you would never dare do that. So if someone has copied those in their books, why should he be censured for that? And as I said, he's someone who knows the hadith. If he is bringing something like this, he knows why he's bringing. What is the wisdom behind it? And as I said, they are not brought as a primary evidence, rather as a supportive evidence. And he would then explain it in the nice way. And the impact that it has in ummah, you would see, I do not think in the last 100 years, and even before that there has been any organization in the ummah that has worked for 100 years, number one, and that had carried on in such a way, in the most peaceful way, door to door, inviting people to come to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the outcome is such that you would find the worst of the worst people with regards to their action has come to practice. You find the celebrities, the dancers, the drug addicts, the people who are in this prostitutions and what sort of different haram act, leaving that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, coming to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perhaps the only organization that has even attracted the film stars and also the people who are living in this transgender world artificially. Not talking about hermaphrodites, talking about the artificially living in that life of homosexuality, living for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the mehnat of Tablighi Jama'at. Now that's the whole idea. Invite people to Islam. With that, obviously there will be criticism for anything and everything. Especially in the later time, in the last 20-30 years, there has been a decline with regards to the people working there, because ilm, which was the mainstay, and spirituality, which was the cornerstone of the Jama'ah, in the form of Maulana Ilyas Sahib rahmatullah alayh, then his son Maulana Yusuf rahmatullah alayh, then Maulana, all the great imams that led one after the other, they were all fantastic. So we, Inam Hassan Sahib, and then all those giants. Now, as I said, in the last 20-30 years, there has been a lack of knowledge of Deen, Sharia, because the focus has been too much on just inviting people rather than self-rectification or the knowledge or ilm. And that's why we see this divide now only happen in the 5-7 years. Two groups, first time ever. And there are obviously differences. So you can find many loopholes, as you would do in any organization. This is the biggest organization in the whole world of Muslims, which has to have obviously issues that could be rectified. For example, the lack of connection to Quran, the lack of involving in some of the current issues and affairs where a Muslim has to have an opinion and Muslims should get involved, have some say or some source. But anyway, the job that they have had, the job description was to invite people from the community back to the masjid, bring them back to the house of Allah. So that was their goal. That is why they do not get involved in anything else, which I think is reasonable. But in the olden days, they used to get connected to ulama, now they're actively discouraged. Sometimes openly, sometimes subliminally, subtly. Do not get connected to ulama unless they are part of this da'wah. So obviously then you do not get a cut dry, very state of the art, the in-depth expertise, qualified ulama or the scholarship teaching the people about deen. Because if you have people among yourself doing the same thing, there will be issues. You have to have a very thorough understanding of Sharia through the scholars who are involved in teaching day in, day out. Not someone who's studied and forgot or left it, not taught for many, many years. That's not at all on. This is the greatest ni'mah the Muslim has as the ilm, the knowledge. So that is a problem with Tablighi Jama'at, about lack of knowledge now, not connecting to ulama as much, considering themselves to be the best than ever or anyone before, thinking that this Tablighi Jama'at, the way that we do invite people back to Islam, is the only thing that we initiated and no one else does that. Ulama do that and been doing it for 1400 years, way better than anyone else can even think. The knowledge that they have, obviously they can impart that. What knowledge do the common people have in Tablighi Jama'at? We see very little. Out of 6 points, they do not go beyond that anyway. But they've got this misconception. On top of that, some of them will say, you know what? Oh, we are doing the better job. You guys are doing the work of Wali, Awliyaullah. We are doing the work of Nabi. And that's completely ridiculous and ignorant idea. Because the ta'aleem ta'allum and tazkiyah is the job of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. And to think that ulama do not go out to invite people to masjid, that's why we are doing better job. Not at all. Ulama impart that knowledge day in, day out from the pulpit, from their writings, from their speeches. And the knowledge that they had obviously is way more than common people in Tablighi Jama'at altogether. Obviously, alim is a alim. How could you equate a non-alim to an alim? لا يستوي الذين قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب. So yes, there are issues, but despite that, even now, despite all his problems, Tablighi Jama'at is one of the greatest work that's been happening, and people should try and help them as and when needed. But remember, this work was initiated by ulama, like Maulana Ilyas Sahib. All his literature is by Maulana Zakaria, who's an alim who never spent time in Tabligh, by the way, like going out and doing gasht and things like that. It's not for ulama, it doesn't have to be. Yes, yet ulama go there, that'd be beneficial inshallah ta'ala for them and for people. But ulama has other ways of inviting people to deen, and they do day in, day out anyway. That's their job. They're the forerunner of and the supporter of the edifice of Islam. So there's no comparison. So with all those issues, there is still a lot of good and goodness in the mihnat of Tablighi Jama'at. People should try and invite and go and join them, spend time with them. But that shouldn't be the be-all and the end-all. Some people who get stuck to Tablighi Jama'at, they never come out of that. They think this is the only way. They never elevate their level of understanding Quran or Deen. They keep it to wherever they were, they just keep it at that level. That's the biggest problem. They don't even improve their tajweed or tafsir or Quranic understanding. Never read the translation of Quran, even with the teacher and the ulama and Durus al-Quran. That has to be done, without which they would lose out on a lot. So there is, the people who have issues with Tablighi Jama'at tend to be those who are unwise in their criticism. They do not see the positive sign of it. They consider it to be the action itself to be bid'ah, which is completely ridiculous idea. It means that any university that you go and teach people after Asr, for example, why you fix that day and time, that should be bid'ah as well. This is an organization style. This is a way of coming to the required, or the requirement of the time, need of the time. So I shouldn't, pay attention to people who mock Tablighi Jama'at generally. But there's a lot of good that's happening with them. May Allah continue to bless them, and people should try and support them. May Allah make us wise enough to understand the wisdom and values behind things. So whatever they have put in their job description, don't go and ask them beyond that. They never said that we are creating and producing ulama and mujahids and the political leaders and they never. Their job is to connect people to ulama, which they should continue. But the problem is sometimes the job itself becomes the goal. That shouldn't be the case. Da'wah itself should never become the goal. Rather, it is a means to a goal. Goal being connecting people to ulama, so ulama would connect them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that they can get their akhirah sorted out. May Allah give us tawfiq.